What is the meaning of integrated audit? Audit of financial statement plus audit of internal control over financial report. So you're doing a regular audit of financial statement and you're doing an audit of internal controls as well. Which internal controls? Process related internal control or financial reporting related internal control? Internal control over financial reporting, जिसको हम लोग बोलते हैं ICFR. What about other internal controls? Other internal control auditor देखेगा भी नहीं. He will not even stare at its face. Auditor is only concerned about misstatements in the financial statement and internal control over financial reporting. So in an integrated audit, an auditor audits financial statements, of course, but also internal control. So auditor is auditing financial statement plus internal control. Which internal control? Internal control over financial reporting. In दोनों को audit करेगा auditor in an integrated audit. Now let us see for issuers कैसे हो सकता है, non-issuers कैसे हो सकता है. For an issuer, it is always integrated audit. Matlab, always he is going to give an opinion on internal control as well. This is very important. So, for an issuer, it is always an integrated audit. So, he is always going to give an opinion on internal control as well. Why? Why should we always do that? Because it is required as per PCAOB standards. It is also required as per Dodd-Frank Act. What is this Dodd-Frank Act? On issuer integrated audit requirement. Dodd-Frank Act relates to issuer integrated audit requirements. Then Section 404 of Sarbanes-Oxley Act. So all these things require that in the case of an issuer, always there should be integrated audit. What are the requirements? PCAOB, Dodd-Frank Act and Section 404 of Sarbanes-Oxley Act or SOX. What does it say? Audit of ICFR. What is ICFR? Internal control over financial reporting is required for large accelerated filers. So SOX 404 has a terminology called large accelerated filers. Large, you understand. Accelerated means fast moving. Filers are those people who are listed in the exchange, that is issuers. For large accelerated filers, what is required? Integrated audit is mandate. So net to net, what do you understand, guys? For issuers, integrated audit is optional or mandate? It is mandate as required by PCAOB, Dodd-Frank Act and Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Now also please note, no less important is that management should give a written representation accepting the responsibility for internal control. So management should give a written representation wherein he will accept the responsibility for internal control. This is as far as issuers are concerned. Then let's move to non-issuers. Now while issuers we said it is always mandatory, for non-issuers there is a choice. Choice of what? Choice of either an integrated audit or audit of financial statements only. So we never talked about audit of internal control only. ऐसा नहीं होता है. Audit of internal control only is nothing but internal audit. So we are not talking about internal audit at all. तो या तो वो financial statement करेगा का audit या financial statement plus internal control का करेगा. Now, what is the rule that is applicable? SAS 130 is, if you remember long ago, almost पिछले जन्म में, we had studied about SAS. SAS is applicable to what kind of entities, guys? Non-issuers. It is applicable to non-issuers. So इसीलिए non-issuer when he is doing integrated audit, he will follow SAS 130, and issuer when he is doing integrated audit will follow PCAOB standards. Clear? अब non-issuer को choice था. either an integrated audit or audit of financial statements only. So audit of financial statements mean, what does he give? He gives a true and fair view. Regular audit of financial statements without internal control. Now tell me, in this audit also, is he going to check the internal controls or not? Yes. What for? Irfan, for what? Muskan, Ekta, you said yes. For what is he going to check the internal control? He is not required to, neither by law, PCAOB standards, nor by agreement, because we were not employed to check the integrated audit. We were employed for only financial statements. To understand the entity, okay. To decide on NTE of audit procedures, to decide whether he should rely on the controls or not. For that purpose, for audit planning, for detection of the level of risk, right? So even then, it is but auditor's discretion. Auditor may decide कि internal control ठीक ठाक है, तो मैं चलो check कर लूँ whether it is good or not. Otherwise, he might decide, no, control is pretty bad. No point, waste of time looking at it also. Let me start with my audit. So here, audit of financial statement, the law does not require him to check internal control. Even the client did not require him to, because the engagement was for financial statement. So the agreement, audit appointment did not require him to check the internal controls. So he might take a decision to check or not check. But if there is an integrated audit, okay, then he will, audit of control can be performed only if the management accepts its responsibility for internal control, provides evidence to support, and gives written representation for internal control. So, जब भी internal control check किया जाता है, management should accept its responsibility, provide evidence, and give written representation. So here also we said management representation. Here also we said management representation. So both these cases, a written representation is required to be given by the management for internal control. तभी हम लोग integrated audit करेंगे. Okay. So now if you see, I'm taking an arrow from these two things. So for issuers, integrated audit, and for non-issuers also, only integrated audit, not financial statement. So I'm taking integrated audit for both. ये दोनों, what is the auditor's objective for internal control? Express an opinion on company's internal control. Is he going to give an opinion on internal control? Yes, he is. Because this is an integrated audit, guys. So where it is an integrated audit, the auditor will give an opinion on internal control and obtain sufficient appropriate evidence whether weakness exists in internal control. So two important things. In the case of integrated audit, he gives an opinion and obtains sufficient appropriate evidence about existence of internal control or weakness of internal. For this purpose, that is to obtain evidence and to give an opinion, he has to design the test of controls. Without testing the controls, how will he gather evidence and how will we arrive at an opinion? So he has to design a process of test of controls. That is, he has to do planning as well for testing the controls. So for test of controls also planning chahiye kya? हाँ, चाहिए. Auditor of an issuer plus non-issuer should test 5 components of internal control over financial report. And what are those 5 components? Crime. You remember? Control environment, risk assessment, information and communication, monitoring, and existing control activities. So the auditor, whether he is doing the integrated audit of a non-issuer or of an issuer, he is required to check the 5 components of ICFR, that is crime. Now what is he going to test? He is going to evaluate the design, operating effectiveness of internal control, and obtain supporting evidence. So whenever he is doing internal control testing, first of all, he has to plan the testing. Why? Because he has to collect evidence and give an opinion. When he is testing, what should he test? He should test all the 5 components of crime. And what is he going to test? He should evaluate the design and the operating effectiveness and also obtain sufficient appropriate evidence on internal control.